David Ornstein is reporting that Chelsea and Napoli are in advanced discussions on a potential deal that would send Romelu Lukaku to Napoli on a permanent transfer and the signing of Victor Osimhen on loan to Chelsea with an option to buy. Now, when I seen this, a few things kind of went through my head, chat. First and foremost, wow, what a deal for Chelsea if this ends up happening. And also, what the hell is happening at Napoli? The potential to get a guy like Lukaku off your books, which, let's be real, since the first season he's been there, scratch that, since the first interview he gave, 2 months into his first season there, the objective for Chelsea Football Club has been getting Lukaku out of the club. And it's been very difficult because of the wages that he was on, the length of years he had on his contract. But that's been a big goal of Clear Lake and of Chelsea Football Club and of their fans, that Lukaku has to be removed from the squad. It's almost like that'll be like turning a new leaf in the chapter that is Chelsea Football Club. And it's been very difficult. They obviously loaned him out to Inter the first year, didn't go so great. They loaned him out to Roma, did okay, he scored some goals, but nothing hardly groundbreaking. But it looks like he is now on his way full-time to Napoli. We can talk about how the implications of that as well too, and what that means for Napoli, because let's be real, Lukaku rejoining Antonio Conte, a manager who, in my opinion, he found his best form of his career under, right? Under Antonio Conte, he became the Serie A top scorer, I believe, one season. He was definitely the Serie A MVP, in which they won the league, breaking a 10-year duck for that. And just in terms of his overall game, I really think Antonio Conte was probably the first manager in his entire career that knew how to get the best out of Lukaku with his strengths and also unlock a new side of Lukaku's game, which was really his ability to play with his back to goal. And under him, we saw Lukaku as one of the most fearsome strikers in Europe. And there's a reason why he ended up going to Chelsea just a year later for a record fee at the time. So that is potentially a massive move, Lukaku heading over to Napoli. Let's be real. Lukaku is no longer the same devastating force that, in my opinion, was kind of knocking on the door of top 5 strikers in the world at one point. I don't think he's that guy anymore. I think he is starting to slow down. But if you're telling me Lukaku can't do damage for Napoli under Antonio Conte with the team that they still have, Napoli didn't all of a sudden turn into a bad team, chat. That's still a team that can do something in Serie A. I think that's a very, very promising pickup from Napoli. And as for Victor Osimhen, right? I'm a big Victor Osimhen fan. Let me just put that out there right away. You can find tweets on my account of me back in 2021 or 2022 chat, time ago, of me saying I would love to see Osimhen at Man United as a sort of Erling Haaland alternative. And the reason is simple. When I look at Victor Osimhen, I look at a player, in my opinion, chat, that is tailor-made for the Premier League. If there was a striker prototype on the market right now that doesn't already play in the Premier League that is perfect and would adjust, in my opinion, in no time to the Premier League, in my opinion, that's Victor Osimhen. Now, I know there's a lot of, not critics, but skeptics about his game, right? How clean is his overall game? Is he the easiest on the eye? How is his overall center forward play? I think those criticisms are valid to an extent. But when I look at the center forward, or the kind of center forward that typically, historically thrives in the Premier League, really takes the league by storm, I think Victor Osimhen is that and more. This guy is an absolute bully up front, chat. Honestly, if you haven't gotten a chance to see Victor Osimhen extensively, the first thing you will notice about his game is how direct and how hungry for goal and how overall just powerful the guy is. He's an absolute unit for how tall he is. Off the front foot, playing off the last line, being able to bully defenders, the guy's an absolute handful for any defenders. If I'm a center back, right? This is always how I think about it when it comes to center forwards. How much of a nightmare or how much of a handful are you for center backs to deal with? And in Victor Osimhen, I think he is as much a handful as you can get in the modern game. Honestly, you tell me a center forward, you're maybe looking at Erling Haaland in terms of physically, both in terms of how rapid and how strong you are as a center forward that can disrupt defenders. I think maybe Haaland is the only one that is even on Osimhen's level in terms of being able to dominate center backs, occupy entire defenses. Osimhen in that regard is absolutely ridiculous, chat. But also, in terms of his technical game, again, is he the cleanest, most aesthetically pleasing player? I wouldn't say so, but he's a technically sound player. I don't think that's really up for discussion. Osimhen can trap a ball. Osimhen can run with the ball. Osimhen's a very adept finisher. He's very intelligent with his movement. For the most part, I really think he's one of those players that if he comes to the Premier League this year, I actually think he could go down as the best signing of the window. And that's for anybody who picks him up. I look at a team like Arsenal, right? I think if Arsenal were to pick up Victor Osimhen, that's a signing that for me propels them to top of the league. I genuinely think that's the kind of player that is that impactful. Now let's look at what it means for Chelsea. Chelsea were a team last season that never really got going until maybe the last quarter of the season. And a big reason for that, in my opinion, well, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think tactically they were never really They never really like got a grasp of what Pochettino was trying to get them to play. But also, I look at their attack, and I've always thought this about Chelsea in the last few years. It puzzles me, it baffles me why they continue going into the market and signing a center back or two every single window when they already, well, up to this point, have had like a surplus of great center backs, or at least a surplus of like competent center backs. And you look at their attack, and that's really where Chelsea have had issues. Whether it's creating chances or whether it was last season finishing those chances. And a big reason for that is you look at the attackers that Chelsea have kind of invested this much money in. Nico Jackson, right? Nico Jackson is a very adept center forward when it comes to playing football. Holding up the ball, giving defenders problems, running the channels, hold up play, link up play. He's pretty good. Putting the ball in the back of the net, Nico Jackson is not good. And nobody can try and convince me with the amount of goals that he scored, whatever. Watch the guy play. In front of goal, you are not putting your life on the line if Nico Jackson is one-on-one. I'm sorry, you're just not. His finishing is miles off where it needs to be considered an elite center forward. He has a lot of positives that he brings to his game. He's a very, very competent footballer. But as a finisher, Nico Jackson is not that guy. Again, you can tell me about the 14 Premier League goals, chat. Come on. We all watched the guy last year. Can he score goals? Yes. Is he an elite level goal scorer? Hell no. Hell no. And that's fair. You don't have to be a hater to say that. You can like Nico Jackson. You can think he has a bright future. You can think that he has all the tools to eventually become that. But at this current moment, Nico Jackson he isn't clinical in front of goal. You can't rely on him in front of goal. And it cost them big time last season. In the FA Cup semi-final more than anything, honestly, against City, that game was the perfect representation of all the strengths that Nico Jackson has and all the weaknesses. He ran City's defense ragged at times, honestly, carrying the ball forward, holding off players, running in behind. He was a nightmare. But the last action, Nico Jackson's not there yet. In Victor Osimhen, you are signing an upgrade. No question about it. You're signing an upgrade, and one of the best upgrades you could get. I'm telling you right now, any defense playing against Chelsea, if they have the option to play against Nico Jackson or Victor Osimhen, they're choosing to play against Nico Jackson every single day of the week. Every single day, because Osimhen is a handful, man. And I'm telling you, I just think it's a match made in heaven, right? A lot has been made about Osimhen in comparisons to Lukaku in terms of like they're both big, powerful center forwards. They plied their trade in Italy and did really well. And I think people looked at Lukaku, what he did in the Premier League compared to Serie A, and they get scared. First of all, that's lazy analysis because Lukaku has almost, does he have 150 Premier League goals? If he doesn't, he's damn near it. Lukaku was a success in the Premier League. He might not have ended up hitting the levels of like the best strikers of all time, but Lukaku's overall impact in the Premier League is a net positive. Don't get it twisted. He scored goals wherever he went. Even at Man United, which is probably where he got the most criticism in his career, he still scored goals. At Chelsea, his first season, I think he still scored 14 goals. So he scores everywhere he goes, but that's besides the point. That's Lukaku. To think that Osimhen, just because Lukaku, when he went to Chelsea, didn't have his greatest time, Osimhen is going to find similar struggles, in my opinion, is blatantly bigoted and it's blatantly ignorant. I'm not even going to go into the reasons why that's the case, but you guys all know what I'm talking about. That is bigoted analysis, to be honest with you, because you're looking at a guy with his physical profile and saying because he didn't do it, he's not going to do it either. That's lazy, bigoted analysis, and I won't even entertain that, to be honest with you. Because if you truly look at what Osimhen offers as a center forward in 2024, in my opinion, chat, I might be coming from a place of bias because I'm a big fan of the guy, but I think if any team in the league were to sign him, he immediately impacts them in the table 2 to 3 places, in my opinion, if there's even 2 to 3 places to make up. So in my opinion, if Liverpool were to sign a guy like that, completely transforms the makeup of that team. A team like Arsenal signing Victor Osimhen, he takes them from a very, very competent, challenging team to a team that can seriously challenge, in my opinion, on all 3 fronts next year. A team like Man United, if they had Victor Osimhen, there's no question that they are right again in the thick of things in the Champions League positions. And Chelsea, for me, is no different. Chelsea will be back to being a serious team, competing all season long, not just the last quarter of a season, all season long for those top 4 positions. And hell, they might do it without him. They might. But I'm telling you, of Osimhen right there, that's a guy that every single defense coming up against him are going to have to back up a few yards further. They're going to have to specifically game plan. And in a manner, not in the exact same way that they do with Haaland, because Haaland, his gravity, his aura is a totally different level. It's a totally different level. You have guys hugging Erling Haaland for 90 minutes a game. But I'm telling you, his impact on how defenders will have to game plan for him will be maybe not the same level, but of a similar level. That's a guy that as a defense in total, you have to keep an eye out for him at all times because he's capable of bullying you in so many different ways. Off the last line, running in behind. There are very few defenders in this league that can keep up with Victor Osimhen in a foot race over 10, 20, 30 yards. Very, very few defenders, if any at all. In the air, Victor Osimhen is as devastating as it comes in terms of picking balls from the air and heading it at goal. He is as devastating as they come. Playing with his back to goal. What defender is realistically bullying Victor Osimhen if that big of a guy is holding up the ball against you? Again, very, very few. Running the channels. Very adept at it. So for me, I think you're looking at a massive, massive problem if Victor Osimhen comes to the Premier League, honestly. Chelsea have a lot of issues, and that's not to say Osimhen will solve all of them, but he makes them a much, much more terrifying prospect if he does come. And yeah, Raf just says it here, right? What's good, Lyes? The thing I love most about Osimhen is how good of a header he is. A lost art amongst his peers nowadays. Absolutely, right? You look at the modern day center forward, and it almost seems like that era of like every center forward having to be very good in the air. It's not a requirement anymore because of how much the ball is played on the ground these days. Heading is a lost art amongst elite center forwards. You have a few that can still do it. Watkins, very, very good in the air. Kane, pretty good in the air as well too. But you look at Haaland, for example. Haaland's not that great in the air, Chad. He's an unreal athlete. He's massive physically, but Haaland is not a great header of a ball. Like, he can score with his head, but it's not like Drogba, for example, or it's not like, even Fernando Torres was quite good with his head, let's be real. Most of the center forwards of that era are very, very good in the air. Haaland, compared to his peers, right, because so few players are great in the air anymore, okay, he's solid, but you'd expect Erling Haaland, for example, that's probably one of the weaknesses in his like goal-scoring bag, which is crazy to say, but it just kind of sums up the fact that in today, like Raf said, most elite center forwards aren't great at heading the ball anymore. Osimhen is elite at heading the ball. And I'm not even talking about just compared to his peers. In any era, Osimhen would be a massive threat in the air. It's one of the biggest tools in his toolbox. And yeah, Kane is also very, very good in the air. Like, I would agree with that. You're talking about that level. But let's talk about Osimhen to Chelsea in terms of like what it also means, right? Because for years, Chelsea have kind of had the center forward curse, if you want to call it, the number 9 curse. Like most number 9s that come to Chelsea, they struggle. And let's be real, they're big boots to fill. And they're boots that really, I know Diego Costa did a decent job of it. Diego Costa won 2 leagues for Chelsea and he was damn impressive in both of them. I'm a big Diego Costa fan. So without being disrespectful, he's the exception to the rule, right? We're going to leave him to the side. But since Drogba, Chelsea have almost never been able to really find a long-term solution at that position. You've had guys who have come in and fulfilled a role. Like I said, Nico Jackson scored 14 goals in the league. Giroud did a thing for a few years. It's been a barren run at center forward. They brought in Higuain. They brought in Falcao. They brought in Fernando Torres. They had Daniel Sturridge. They tried it out with Alexandre Pato. They've had a lot of center forwards up there. And Morata as well too. Tammy Abraham. And none of them, bar Diego Costa for a few seasons, was able to replicate what Didier Drogba meant to that team. Drogba is Chelsea Football Club for as far as I'm concerned. We were talking, in fact, today on the eye test in terms of most impactful signings in Premier League history. In my opinion, he ranks extremely high for numerous variety of reasons, right? Number 1, in my opinion, Drogba was the very first center forward that came to the Premier League and redefined what it meant to be a center forward. Because before he came, every single team was trying to play 4-4-2, 2 strikers up front. For the most part, 1 big man, 1 little man. That's how you operate. 2 in midfield, 2 box-to-box midfielders, 2 wide wingers that just cross balls into the box, and 2 center forwards. But in Drogba, you had a guy that was so capable of providing so many different roles, whether you need a hold-up striker, a guy to run the line, to basically to run in behind, a guy who could run the channels, a guy who could do everything up front, that it meant you didn't have to play 2 up front anymore. You could move another guy into the midfield and congest the midfield and pack it. And you could even start playing with out-and-out, like, inside wingers, if you want to call it that, inside forwards. Drogba, in that sense, completely changed the game. Because from there, everybody started going from 4-4-2 to like a 4-2-3-1. And then eventually a 4-3-3. And that never happened, really, until Didier Drogba emerged in the Premier League. Obviously, we know the impact that he went on to go and have, right? The Champions League in 2012. Twice he was the Golden Boot winner. He meant so much for Chelsea and came up for them so huge in so many different ways. But another way that Drogba completely changed the outlook of Chelsea Football Club is culturally. Drogba is so important for Africans, and his impact in Africa is so much so that you look at Africa as a continent. If you look at the most supported clubs in Africa, you got maybe Man United 1, just because of how global a phenomenon they are. But Chelsea might be second, and damn it, they might be first as well too in certain countries as well. Chelsea in Africa are an absolute powerhouse amongst fans. Like, and a large part of it is to do with Drogba. Because before Drogba, I would say Arsenal was not saying they're not huge anymore, but they were massive in terms of like, they were really, for what I can remember, the first club that you were really starting to see at times full black players on the team, 1 through 11. You had representation there. They were the culture club. And I'm not saying they're not anymore, but like they were the first, right? But in Chelsea, signing Didier Drogba was such a statement signing in terms of like all of a sudden you have Africans from all around the world looking at Chelsea and looking at Drogba and saying, oh, this is my team now. And you look at the players that came after him, Salomon Kalou, John Obi Mikel. You have so many of them, bro. So many of them. And a lot of them tell you the reason why I support Chelsea is because of Didier Drogba. The guy was a phenom. And I look at a guy like Victor Osimhen, and I think it was on John Obi Mikel's podcast last year where he was effectively saying, yeah, everybody deep down knows that Osimhen wants to sign for Chelsea. Like it's his boyhood club if you want. Like that's the team that Osimhen would love to join. And I think everybody in the back of their minds has known that Osimhen to Chelsea is a real possibility. Like since he won the Serie A MVP a few years ago, I think everyone deep down has known that Osimhen to Chelsea, if it's a move that Chelsea are willing to basically pay for, Osimhen will be there in a heartbeat. And it looks like that move is on the verge of happening. And to think, they're getting him potentially on a loan with an option to buy. And I'm sure Chelsea, no matter what, will take up that option because he's young, he's hungry. That's another thing with Osimhen that I absolutely love, right? Osimhen's hunger to score goals, I think, is such an understated part of his game. This guy will put his head through a wall to get to the ball. This guy will literally put his body on the line no matter what to score goals. And I think that hunger to score goals, honestly, chat, is so important. Like everybody loves scoring goals. I'm not trying to say that. Like center forwards love scoring goals, but you know there's center forwards that maybe scoring goals isn't their ultimate priority. Gabriel Jesus, for example. That guy doesn't die to score goals. He doesn't. I'm sorry, chat. Anthony Martial was not a striker that died to score goals. Berbatov, the same way. These guys are guys that love to play with the ball. These guys are guys that they're in love with the ball. They love to get involved. They love to get touches. Osimhen is in love with scoring goals. I would say he's addicted to scoring goals. And as a center forward, that it's an intangible, right? There's no way of measuring it, but it's such an important intangible to have. A guy that is literally willing to die to score a goal as a center forward for your team. That's all you can ask for. And trust me, the goals will come. So, Osimhen to Chelsea, I'm a fan.